Is the Apple Watch Series 8 good almost a year later? Let's find out. Moving on to our first thing, we're going to be talking about its screen. Now, I have been very disappointed by these screens. I have had an Apple Watch and a Series 3, Series 6 and a Series 8. And I have to say, all of the series I've had pretty much have scratched ridiculously easy, and it's quite ironic because the two Apple Watches that I've had most recently have got scratched in the exact same place in the exact same way, and I don't know how this has happened. And to be honest, I don't think that it's that easy to replicate, but it happened and I was disappointed because I've only had this watch about 2 months now, and yeah, it just really has not held up well. So I just thought I'd mention that. But other than that, the screen has been pushed right to the edges, and it is honestly such a noticeable jump going from the Apple Watch and then to the Series 6, and even from the Series 6 to the Series 8, I did not think I noticed the difference, but the screen is pushed that much closer to the edge, which honestly makes such a difference. Now, I must say, the battery life on this watch has been absolutely amazing. Not that I've had really an issue with any Apple Watch battery in the past, but this has been absolutely fantastic. I actually think I've gone about 2 days with this battery alone, and that is saying something, because these Apple Watch batteries can be very hit or miss. Now, obviously, one thing that is great is if you have a long battery, and you have been wearing it for 2 days and you do get low, you want your charging speed to be quick. And the charging speed on this watch is actually really, really quick. And it is honestly so nice to see a watch that can charge really quick and also have good battery life, because I switched to Android back in August last year and I got a Pixel watch and I noticed the differences. I wanted to see what Android was like now, because I haven't actually used it since 2020 and I always like switching between the two to see what operating system I like at the time, and I decided to get a Pixel watch, and that watch was interesting. I noticed a couple things on that which I definitely don't get on the Apple Watch. For one, the animations were not as smooth as the Apple Watch, the speed was not as good as the Apple Watch, the battery life was subpar, and I also noticed the integration with the phone is nowhere near as good. So Apple Watches are definitely on top for me, but that is just my preference. And that moves you swiftly on to the integration with the phone. The integration with the phone is absolutely amazing. Compared to Android counterparts, you are not going to find anything better than this. Like, you get full access from the watch of your phone. Like, you can use the camera mirroring feature, which is on Android but never works. Your messages come through on time at the same time. You can send messages like you can on Android, but you can also do this on iOS. But this honestly works so much better on iOS because it works quick and it all runs through iMessage. So even if you're not connected to your phone, you can still send messages via Wi-Fi. Also, phone calls are really good, but you know, just who really takes phone calls on an Apple Watch other than when they're just taking a quick call, because it gets really annoying having to just be like this the whole time because your wrist starts to ache. But you know, that is just one perk of having it, is you can take calls, but I would not recommend it very often. I would also say the integration with the fitness app is so much better, whereas with the Pixel Watch, it was in the Fitbit app, but it was also in the Pixel Watch app. So it was all really confusing where your data was going. And if you wanted to get more features, you'd have to pay a monthly subscription, which I think is really weird to have to pay a monthly subscription to be able to use your watch. Whereas on the Apple Watch, everything comes for free other than Fitness Plus, but who really uses Fitness Plus? Now, as I mentioned briefly, doing text on Apple Watch is actually so much better now. You've got that keyboard. You don't have to sit there scribbling on your wrist, like sitting there for ages, and it gets the letter wrong and then you have to redo it. The predictive typing on this thing is mental. Like, considering how tiny that keyboard is, it can actually know what you're going to say. Now, I have found the best way to type on the Apple Watch is doing swipe, which is a lot better than having to just sit there individually tapping the keys, and it's really useful to just send a quick text if you need to. So I did notice that is definitely an A+ feature, and I think that it should be on all watches. I mean, I was a bit confused why they said not come earlier, considering the Pixel Watch with a tiny screen had this, but whatever. Now, I am a person that really does not care about taking my watches in the sea or in any type of water with me, and I do need them to be able to last. And honestly, all the water resistance on my Series 6 and this watch has been absolutely amazing. I've had no issues, and that Series 6 is still going and is on my mum's wrist now, and it is no issues. It's been in salt water. As long as you wash it after, you just put it in a sink, you should be absolutely fine. And I did notice that you get all this salt residue on the outside of the watch if you don't wash it, so I definitely recommend washing it. I'd also say once you have come out of the water, I like to repeat the water sound a couple times and then just smack it against the towel for good measure. Like, you can get all that water after you just smack the watch really hard. Like, it is honestly really good. As the Walkie Talkie feature is good if you want to annoy your friends, but other than that, I really would say it is very much a gimmick. But I suppose for a lot of people, that Walkie Talkie feature will not even be into consideration for any of that. Now, obviously, there are a lot of different sensors on the watch. You've got your heart rate, you've got your blood oxygen, you've even got ESG? ESG, I think that's what it's called. You've got an ESG, and I'd say the most gimmicky one out of all of them, well, out of the two, is definitely your blood oxygen and the ESG. I mean, this ESG is not, like, useful. It's like, it's not going to give you any details that is going to, like, it can sometimes get it wrong, and people will go to the doctors and think that they've got something wrong with them, and it just doesn't really tend to happen. And the blood oxygen, you can't really get a good reading off your wrist. I mean, it does work if you put it on your finger a lot better, but I just think that is such a gimmick, and it is one of those things to make people panic more about their health. And I just think that it is just a feature to try and scare people in a way, but you know, it's a nice feature to have, I guess. I absolutely love the always on display, and I've loved always on display since I got an Android phone, because there is something so nice about having an always on display, and that is one reason why, as soon as the iPhone 14 Pro came out, I was really intrigued to go back to iPhone, because of the always on display. I loved it, and I love it on my Apple Watch. I have always loved that since the Series 6 when I had mine, because I went from a Series 3 to then back to a Series 6, and it was really nice. Like, to have that always on display is lovely. Like, if you can just look at your wrist at a glance, you don't even have to flick your wrist up. It is amazing. I don't understand why people do not like that, because I've noticed from experience that it doesn't really affect battery life. If I'm still getting amazing battery life from my always on display, why would it really affect the battery life? It doesn't make any sense to me why people do not like it, but I guess it's just personal preference. And I love the fact that this screen is big, even on the small ones. Like, I mean, these screens were terrible on the small ones before. Like, it was a little tiny square, and now we're getting a similar sized screens to some of the bigger ones that came out originally. It has been so nice to be able to have a full-size keyboard, have big watch faces, have big notifications come through. It has been amazing. Now, I've always been a person that goes for the GPS version rather than the cellular version. Now, my main reason for this is because I've never seen the reason why I would need to get a cellular version, because I'm always by my phone. Now, my friend does have a cellular version, and it is great, but it is very much a gimmick, I'd say. Like, it's going to drain your battery life, and you're only going to use it every so often, and you're paying monthly to be able to use that. So what is the point? For most people, they're always by their phone, and an Apple Watch is just a notification center for them without having to get out your phone. I found that for myself. I use it for fitness tracking and also for my notifications coming through on my phone. Now, Watch OS is on top compared to all the Android counterparts. I don't care what anyone says, Samsung watches and Pixel watches, the software is just not up to the same level as an Apple Watch. This is why the Apple Watches are on top for me. I personally think that watchOS is untouchable when it comes to software, and I just really think that it works well with your phone. It has the similarities to your phone. You've got iMessage, it works, it's snappy, there's no delay when you do anything, and it's honestly fantastic. And one thing I would also say is the build quality of these watches is really nice. The aluminium ones have come a long way. All the buttons are nice and clicky. The magnetic charging is nice. I mean, that charging, that is sweet. When you put that on the dock, it just feels so nice. Now, lastly, I would say if you are looking to get an Apple Watch Series A, I would definitely recommend it. You have got to be the right target. For most people, the Apple Watch SE is going to be absolutely fine. But if you do want these always on display, and you do want your blood oxygen, and you do want slightly longer battery life and your keyboard, I definitely say it is worth it just for the keyboard and the always on display and the slightly bigger display. I definitely say it's worth it. But honestly, the Apple Watch SE is so much cheaper that you might as well go for it, because you can get some really good deals on these things. Like, I've seen ones go up for £200, £150, really cheap, refurbished or second hand. So I definitely recommend that. But that's all I have to say for this video. It's been Harry. I'm out. Peace.